So welcome, everybody. This is the second discussion in a series of panel discussions on workplace mental health. I'm Jodi Butts. I'll be moderating the discussion today. I am the Executive Director of Rise Asset Development. We work with entrepreneurs with a history of mental health and addiction challenges, and we support them in pursuing entrepreneurship and self-employment. And we do that through a low-interest small business loan fund, free training, and volunteer mentorship. Over the last 6 years, we've lent over $500,000 to over 150 entrepreneurs and boast a very competitive payback rate of 93%. It's a pleasure for me to be joined by this great panel, and I know you'll enjoy hearing their rich diversity of perspectives. I'm going to invite them to introduce themselves, and then we will get started.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Alicia. I am a person with lived experience who's been working in mental health for about 6 years, and I'm going to share a bit of my experience today in how I was discriminated against in a workplace and some cool stuff that we've done to avoid that. I'm currently a public speaker. I've spoken over 600 times, including a TEDx talk, and I headlined the UN's World Youth Day in 2014, and I currently write for the Huffington Post.
Hello, my name is Lydia Pawlikowski, and I am a senior health consultant at Morneau, Shepell, and I've been in the workplace wellness industry for about 15 years now, on a national scale in various sectors. And what I do is I listen to our clients' business needs and present solutions to them based on their objectives and what they want to meet, and help them develop total health plans so that eventually their employees will be healthy and happy at work. And when I speak a little bit about those total health strategies, that really isn't trying to understand what those business needs are and understanding what their story is. So for example, really looking at data analytics and understanding what are their employees taking from a drug perspective. Are they on short-term disability, long-term disability, looking at employee and family assistance programs. So really looking at a total picture of health and then helping them implement targeted solutions based on that. And in addition to that, I have the pleasure of working at Centennial College as well. I teach a course in their wellness and health promotion program. And what I do is I take the theory that they learn from a wellness perspective and put it into practice in the workplace. So as they're moving into that, because sometimes theory doesn't really work in the workplace, so really trying to help bridge that gap for them. So although the focus here is about mental health, I really try to bring to the table the total health spectrum, because for example, physical health could impact somebody's mental health, or financial health could also impact someone's mental health. So really excited to be here today. Thank you so much.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Donna Marshall. I'm the CEO of BizLife Solutions, and we're a social enterprise that we dedicate ourselves to promoting and supporting mental health and psychological safety in the workplace. And there is such a close link between psychological health, and by that I mean toxicity in the workplace. So if workplaces are toxic, if there's harassment, if there's bullying, if there's a lot of conflict, that is going to lead and does lead to mental health issues. So we have a lot of people. We also have a private practice, psychology practice. So we get a lot of employees coming to us for therapy who have been bullied and harassed in the workplace. And some of the diagnoses that they receive from our psychologists are PTSD and serious PTSD, depression, anxiety. And we find that there's a difficulty educating the workplace to understand that that link between psychological health and safety and mental health. And then when we get to return to work, everybody knows how to handle somebody who's had a broken leg and it's 6 weeks recovery and you have to be back. There's a real challenge with workplaces and insurance companies that say, okay, you've had PTSD for enough time now, I think you should get back to work. And those are the kinds of things that we advocate for and have actually a huge challenge around, because insurance companies don't understand And the employer also doesn't understand. I actually find employers are much better at hearing than the insurance companies. So that's something we do a lot of advocacy around that. We do harassment investigations in organizations. We work with a legal firm, so certainly we get legal support as well. Our hallmark program is called the HEART program, Harassment Education Advisory Response Team. And we designed this, created this back in the Bill 168 days, which was 2010, because we realized that the psychological dynamic of bullying and harassment is that the person with power is the person who harasses in 80% of cases. So the usual stipulation in most policies is go and report bullying and harassment to your supervisor. But your supervisor's the one who harassed you. Or your supervisor is best friends with the person who harassed you. Or HR is tied up because they work for the organization, and so a lot of people were falling through the cracks. So we came up with this concept of creating an interdependent team within the organization called HEART teams. And we have a HEART manual that teaches them how to investigate, how to advocate, how to educate, and respond to issues of violence and harassment in the workplace. We also advised the Minister of Labour, Kevin Flynn, and his senior team with regard to the recent Bill 132, and they implemented our suggestions into that legislation, one of which is, instead of reporting to a supervisor, you need to have someone you feel safe reporting to in the organization. So we felt very good that we were able to influence that kind of change. Now, the next thing is to roll it out. It doesn't become mandatory until September, but we are moving our HEART program and embracing the sexual harassment component of that. We also have online programs in mental health, psychological safety, compliance training, communication, managing conflict, anything that's relational. We're relational specialists. So how do those relationships play out and create the mental health dynamics in the workplace? And then how can we help support change in that area? We have a bully boot camp, which was designed by our psychologist, our chief psychologist, Dr. Stephanie Bott, and we have rehabilitated bullies in organizations. Not all bullies can be rehabilitated. So it's first of all knowing who can and who can't, which is one of the mental health challenges, right? And we're partnering with the Ontario Psychological Association, offering a certificate program in the management of workplace mental health and psychological safety. We're doing that this weekend, actually, starting tomorrow. If you want to sign up, you're welcome to. Okay.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me. My name's Danielle Stewart, and I currently work for Workplace Safety and Prevention Services. We are a health and safety association, and we work with have an organizational health team that I'm a part of, and we help to provide health and safety or mental health and psychological health and safety solutions to our clients. Prior to working at WSPS, I was a graduate student at Wilfrid Laurier University, where I also completed my undergraduate in kinesiology, focusing in ergonomics. So there's an interesting mix for me with the mental health and the ergonomics. And when I was at school, while I was studying, I developed a mental health program for student awareness. It was entitled Burst Your Bubble, and the idea of it was to break down stigmas, whether it's you creating the stigma or you feel that you are being stigmatized against. We each have a story to share, and feel free that we should be talking about it. So what we did is we provided awareness programs for students and helping them to understand what resources are available to them and getting them the services that they deserve and they need. So that was one of the big things we did at Laurier, and then that transferred to the University of Waterloo and the University of Toronto at the Mississauga campus. Later on, that program then switched over to Waterloo North Hydro as a workplace mental health program, where we implemented it. And there's a number of different interesting challenges and successes that we found with that program. And so I'm going to share a little bit about those stories with you today, and also talk a little bit about what WSPS has to offer as far as mental health in the workplace. So thanks for having me. Looking forward to the rest of the hour we have.
My name is Lydia Beck. I'm an occupational therapist and the co-founder of L&L Consulting, which is a small consulting company focused on supporting mental health at work. So we work with clients in Toronto and elsewhere in Canada of different sizes in a variety of industries, and we focus on deciding and determining sort of where the workplace needs the most support, and then working with them to fill the gaps that they have in terms of mental health resources, and whether that's education or more resources. We work with companies to develop mental health policies to go along with their physical health policies, and we provide workshops. We also have a blog with more resources and covering different topics related to mental health in the workplace. I'm very excited to be here today with everyone and looking forward to getting the conversation going.
So we have a really great panel here, and we also have a big promise. So if you took a look at the website and you saw the description for this discussion, it talked about giving suggestions and advice how to create mental wellness and mental health policies that are living, breathing solutions rather than checklists. So to kick off the discussion, I asked my fellow panelists here, why don't checklists work? We love checking boxes. It feels so good. How come something that feels so good isn't the right approach to really improving mental health in the workplace and effectively engaging with employees on that topic?
I like this quote. It's called Random Acts of Wellness. And we were talking about this earlier, where every employer has great intentions in implementing programs, be it mental health, be it wellness, but it becomes very episodic in nature. And so when you have that checklist approach, you're not necessarily looking at the entire workplace and what an employee goes through when they walk through that door and they say hello to their colleagues and hello to their manager and then sit down and have to get their work done. So it's more than just implementing one item. It's more than that. So it's looking, as to Lydia's point, about creating policies. It's about talking to managers. It's about talking to employees. So there's so many different components. So having a checklist, although we love them, we could be missing something and not looking at the bigger picture and really trying to get to the core issues. That's what you really want to try to do. So an organization, often we would recommend that you need to take a step back and really understand what the issues are to then tackle them. And it takes time. It takes time to do that. It's not going to happen in a year's time or in 6 months' time. It's going to take longer than that. It becomes a very core commitment to the organization that they're going to make a change. So that checklist is an ongoing checklist of different variations of objectives on a yearly basis or on an ongoing basis.
I think checklists can be a very good place to start, especially if it's more linked to some kind of culture assessment with regard to mental health and psychological safety. And in doing that assessment, then we can pull out the gaps. What becomes the challenge is we might have a checklist that looks like create mental health resources for the workplace. Within that, there are so many pieces, and I think that goes to your point that it's a good place, it can be a good place to start, but mental health and psychological safety are complex and layered and really challenging.
One of the things I might add is just the whole idea when you say check box, to me that's a box, and it's very limiting to not only to each individual but to an organization. I think there's so much more that we can do than just limiting ourselves to the 5 items on that checklist, and each organization is really unique. So finding what works for your organization is going to be different from my organization or the person to your left. So really finding the key elements and what characterize and what makes your organization, your employees tick, and what motivates them. You can't put that in a checkbox. So understanding that is really important, and that takes, again, it takes time, it takes research, it takes open questions and dialogue, and open communication and transparency.
I'll add to that, because mental health is very unknown to so many people. It's scary, it's mysterious, it's so misunderstood that having a checklist to follow, someone might be able to follow it, but they might be going about it in the wrong way if they're not sort of aware of what a good mental health resource means, or if they're not aware of what different mental health, what mental health looks like in different people, and what mental illness looks like in different people. So with that sort of lack of awareness and lack of education about mental health in general, I think having a very prescribed approach could be dangerous as well as not productive.
So there might be a role for my list. It's going to be a very long list. Everybody should have a different list. It should be personalized to your culture and your challenges. And there's a lot more to do that probably defies putting on a list. And if you think you can put it all on a list, maybe you're not actually doing it well. And how you sort of action the initiatives that you identify sounds like it really matters a lot. So, and Alicia, I'm going to ask you to kick this next one off. So if a list isn't the be-all and end-all, what might that first step towards starting this conversation in a productive and positive way, what might that look like?
So I'll start off my answer to this with a bit of a story. So I worked for a big tech company in Waterloo, and during my time there, I just had started my advocacy work and was taking media calls around mental health and sharing my story. And I had been on Canada AM, and my manager at this tech company had seen that I was talking about suicide, I was talking about mental health, and I should, not that this matters, but I'll highlight that I was actually in a really good place at this time. And then my manager sought me out to tell me that if he knew I had been suicidal, he would have never hired me. Now, I was lucky at that time to have been an advocate, to have a great community of people around me who would who supported me, who told me that, that wasn't okay to say. And they had this meeting a few weeks later where the CEO talked to all of their younger employees and was trying to entice them to stay at the organization. We had a bunch of students working there. We had a bunch of new grads. He was just making sure that people would stay. And I went up to him and I said, hey, this manager had said this to me, and he was absolutely taken aback because his wife had bipolar. Much of the C-suite team had connections to mental health, and they did not know that this was happening in their organization, and they were actually really rived up. They wanted to fire the guy, and I said, I don't really think that's going to solve the problem. I think he's going to go somewhere else and do that somewhere else. So what can we do? So we started implementing, a workplace mental health program, making sure that it was seen through every level of this organization, which was quite large. And I actually had him come to a speaking engagement, my former manager, I was doing about a year later, and he apologized to me. And so for me, I think it's really important to, when you're starting these conversations, to make sure it is touching the employees that it's happening, that it is touching the managers that have that stigmatizing behavior, or the employees that have that stigmatizing behavior. And I think one way is to do that I've seen worked really cool is if you have people in your C-suite who are comfortable using storytelling, using that, hey, this is not something that a certain kind of person deals with, any kind of person can live through that and gain that respect that way.
The president of the Ontario Bar Association had the courage to come out and talk about his significant mental health issues. I don't know if you know about that. And, the legal community is, as you know, supposed to be tough, not have needs, keep plowing through, and all of that. And so for him to do that kind of startled the lawyers and the legal profession and put people back, and he's made an amazing impact. And then, then out of that, there's the realization that lawyers are people too, and they need support. There are mental health issues, family issues, like everyone else. So he was able to bring down the stigma around that in a significant way.
The former president's name of the OBA is Orlando Da Silva. So if you are a member of the Twitterati, look him up. He continues to tweet about the issue and continues to do a lot of great leadership around it, working with the bar.
I was really going to just bring the point about communication. So I think, to Alicia's point, in order to bring down stigma, you need to actually talk about it so that you know what the problems are, so that you can actually then make that change. And you want to create forums for your employees to be able to say how they're feeling. And if they can't say it face to face, is it in a survey? Is it a focus group? Whatever it may be. But then to communicate that. Communication is really, really integral for the success of any program that you develop. And consistency in that. I was quoting earlier that approximately 30% of organizations across Canada actually consistently measure their programs to see if they're doing well or not. So that's quite low, and so they're not necessarily asking the right questions to continually make it better and have a very clear vision about what their program is about. So that communication component, if you are implementing a program or thinking about doing that, it's just as important as having your vision in place. So then you can articulate exactly what you want your employees to be learning about the program and how you can start reducing that stigma.
Yeah, I think going off of Lydia's comment about communication, that's key. And I think that's one of the first things you got to start doing. And it's simple messaging. It's having those conversations before you get too in depth so that you can ease your company into it. It's a difficult topic for people to talk about. And sometimes if you jump in too soon, too quickly, you're going to be faced with some resilience or some resistance. Hopefully there's resilience too. But some resistance. So making sure that you are, giving them little bits at a time and kind of, bringing them to the water, and then they will drink. So help them out a little bit as much as you can, and ease them into it is a really important thing. That can be done in simple messaging. It can be, one-on-ones that casually occur. This is something we're thinking about doing. This is really important. Those small little conversations have really big impact. It could also be small little posters or conversations, encouraging the Bell Let's Talk campaign, things like that. Small little things make a really big difference and get people thinking. Plant the seed early, and then you can continue on with the journey.
Helpful with that, really planting the seed and getting things started. I think it's really important to have buy-in from the top down, having leaders lead by example, taking on initiatives that they're promoting, that the company's promoting, doing more than just sort of saying, yes, we're making these changes, we're looking into it, we're doing research, really having leaders that embody, taking a lunch break and talking to colleagues in a social manner, not just professional, not just about business all the time. Making really small cultural shifts from the top down can show employees that that's okay, that that's encouraged, and that I think can make a huge difference.
So education, storytelling, consistent communication, easing your way into it, making sure you have buy-in from the top. I would add, because we mentioned it earlier, the Mental Health Commission in Canada has a standard, workplace standard for promoting mental health and wellness in the organization. It's available for free for download on their website. So you can take a look at that. But who should do this? So we heard a little bit about senior leadership, and we talked about consistent communication, which sometimes can mean you have your comms team, if you have one, involved. But what other departments? And is there one single department that's more important than another to engage in this work?
Based on my experience, really believe that you have to find an ambassador or someone that's going to take on the program and ensure that that vision is being communicated out. So not necessarily that it needs to come from HR or it needs to come from health and safety. Everybody has a role to play when it comes to your mental health strategy. But you really still need to have that one person. If it is the CEO who has a problem, or not a problem, but has some mental health issues and wants to share that story, that person can be it. It could be somebody in health and safety, but you really just need to have a clear vision of what that's going to look like. You can also have ambassadors. So if you have an organization that is national and you have several locations, having ambassadors within each of those locations will also help, because also when oftentimes HR leads these types of initiatives, but they can't do all the work themselves either. So they really need those champions around them to help them drive that conversation and help them reduce that stigma.
We set up a heart team in an organization that goes straight across Canada. There's many many branches of it, and we worked very closely with the HR manager. So the Heart team would have days where they'd have, give everybody ice cream and just tell them a little bit about mental health and psychological safety, and just normalized it that way. So then the HR director, who was integral in this, left, and the new HR director came in, and she told me, she said, I had not even sat down in my seat when somebody came up to me and said, I'm on the Heart team. I have to tell you about the Heart team. So that was a way of really going through the organization and coming from the hearts of the people who were involved in that. So that was a really nice way of that being managed through the organization.
Alicia, you've already shared a bit about how you served as an internal champion and really got things kickstarted. Talk to us a little bit about if there's anyone in this room contemplating taking on that role. What should they know? What's their news that you can use? And what did you learn through that process?
So what I learned through that process is when you're looking at people who, are taking this and championing it, I think sometimes we can create something with the best of intentions, and we don't realize that, it's not going to work for all of our employees, or something that we want to come off a particular way isn't coming off that way. And so for me, what worked the best was honestly opening myself up to conversations, to criticisms from people who, were like, okay, you see it this way, but I see it a completely different way, and having those tough conversations was really important. And I think for me, one of the things that, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is also about sitting with people who believe stigmatizing things and believe that it's okay to say these things, and actually have conversations with them. It's a lot easier in person. Like I tend to ignore the trolls on Twitter, but when you work with the trolls, you have to sit down and have some challenging discussions and take care of yourself in that way. And one of the things that's also very important is understanding, when you're looking at workplace mental health, what can you do and what can't you do. And some workplaces are incredibly stressful by nature, and you can't always move a deadline, and you can't always change things. So what can you do to help employees with their wellness? The last thing I'll say, and the thing I learned the most, was sometimes when somebody's suffering, we make a bunch of decisions for them to protect them. We won't invite them to a particular meeting because it's too stressful. We won't put them on a particular project because it's too stressful. But we never actually ask them about these things, if they want to be involved or not. And I think asking is my favorite thing. If you're having one particular employee or an organization looking at how do you deal with mental illness in the workplace, always asking the people with the lived experience is so important.
We've talked about ambassadors, internal champions, and teams. So teams that involve lots of different people from different departments in the organization. What are your thoughts? Who else needs to get on board and has an important role to play?
So I completely agree with all the things. I just want to speak to one of the points there. The other thing is making sure, as an employer or a manager, whoever it is, you're asking, but also if you're experiencing to say no is okay too. I mean, I struggle with that a lot just in my day-to-day life. So it's an important skill to have, to be able to say no and know that it's okay as a manager or supervisor, that if an employee says no, it's not that they don't want to help you, they don't want to do the work, that there's other reasons. So just a little caveat to add to that as well. I guess the leadership we talked about from a CEO perspective, having that top-down approach is hugely important, but also including the employees themselves and getting their opinions, getting their perspectives. And when you meet up with someone that isn't totally on board, get them on your side. There's someone that you need and that you want, because the perspective that they have is likely shared by other people in the community or in the workplace, and they provide key insights into how you can develop a program that best suits your employees. So those people, while they first seem as an obstacle to you, could actually be some of your biggest tools and assets. So try and see and try and understand them and try and help work with them to get them on board. When I was working at Waterloo North Hydro, we had exactly that, and one of our employees, and we speak openly about this as a company, or the company speaks openly about this in other stories, but we had one of our employees who was very much against the program and quite rude actually in a couple of our meetings, directed at me and a couple other people, but specifically towards me. And it was very interesting. It was dealt with very professionally afterwards, and calmed the waters in the meeting. But a couple days later, the gentleman actually went back to my boss and apologized because he was having a really stressful time at home, explained the situation. And it was kind of ironic in a lot of ways because we're talking about a mental health program and he was so resistant to it, yet the reason he was being resistant was because he was dealing with struggles at home and the same kind of thing that we're talking about. So it was really a perfect opportunity to say, this is why we want to do this. So we can, help each other out. And we have in the hydro industry, they have people up on in the poles in the bucket trucks, and there's always someone from a physical safety perspective standing down there watching as a dedicated observer, as they call it. And one of my big things was, why don't we have dedicated observers just on a day-to-day basis when we're all standing here on the ground? Why do you have to be X number of feet in the air to have someone that's looking out for you? So, but anyway, so I think it's really important to engage the employees and get them on board as well, not just a key people. They are key people too, obviously, right? So.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was wanting to highlight the importance of the employees, and going off a little bit about what you said, I think it's really important to respect that because mental health challenges are so common, it's likely, well, first of all, you never know the experiences of someone you're talking to. They could be experiencing things personally. They could have family members, friends very close to them going through challenging things. So I think no matter who you're talking to, especially in the workplace, you need to keep that in mind, that this topic might mean so much to someone, it might mean not much to someone else, depending on experiences. So when you are having these conversations with employees, really being aware and sensitive that everyone's experiences are different and they could be having a really profound impact on their engagement.
So we heard the troll word, and we also heard a great story about converting someone who was originally resistant, and the interesting and complex set of reasons behind that resistance. So what does resistance mean? Are you doing well? Are you not doing well? And what are some other indicators that you can look to, both quantitative and qualitative, to get a sense of how you're doing?
So I believe measurement is really important. So although we are being very thoughtful in how employees are feeling and really want them to understand things, from an employer perspective, you really want to see the measurement and understand what has changed over time. So having those key metrics in place is going to give you the ability to see how successful your program is going to be. And that can be everything from a testimonial from someone sharing their story and saying, I was going through X and I was able to go to my employer and get the tools and resources that I wasn't even aware of before. Everything from employee and family assistance programs to perhaps something on the internet, to maybe watching a video, to reading an article, to looking at perhaps seeing more people participate in their employee and family assistance programs, because that often is a free service for employees to participate in. But sometimes there's even stigma around that, oh, well, I don't know if I can talk to a psychologist about my problem. I can't do that. So that can also be a measurement where you could have 5% of your company utilizing those services, and then after doing a campaign or educating people around it, you might then have 30 or 40% participating. That's amazing, because that means that they're recognizing that I am having a challenge. I may not know what that challenge is, but I'm going to ask the question and say, this is what I'm feeling, and then they're going to be triaged to the appropriate resources. So that too can be a very successful measurement component.
So I think when it comes to resistance, it's important not to avoid it. And there was an organization that wanted us to come in and do some training on mental health and psychological safety with their management team. And the HR director got back to me and she said, nobody wants to attend this, so I don't really know what to do. And I said, I think we need a pre-meeting where we go in and say, okay, you're not comfortable with this, like, what is it? Let's look at whatever the resistance is and understand it. I think it's to your story there. There's something going on, and it could be stigma, it could be all kinds of personal things, personal discomfort. People are pretty uncomfortable thinking they might have to share things about themselves or become vulnerable, especially in a workplace. That's a real barrier to dealing with mental health issues and training people, management, or anyone really, is, this is touchy-feely and I just want to keep working. So, it's maybe, again, taking that step back and looking at legitimate concerns that people have and feeling vulnerable and all of those things, and looking at that first and maybe gently touching on those things before moving into something more substantial.
Did you want to add something on that? The concept. Yeah, I'm going to bring Alicia in but I'm gonna go to you guys first and just see if there's any kind of indicators that the two of you look for when you're working with clients.
So a big part of the assessment process that we engage in is interviews with employees, and I think being a third party coming into a workplace and having those interviews gives us different insight than someone within the company. It seems safer, it seems more removed, and we receive a lot of really candid information, which is so valuable. I think building that trust is really important to understanding where resistance might be coming from. And it also demonstrates sort of what Lydia was saying about awareness of resources. I think so many people come to a company and are given a package when they arrive of all their benefits and their EAP services and everything else. And a lot of companies have huge, amazing programs that no one knows about. And when they find out about them, we've found through our interviews that a lot of people think they're not actually confidential. They're worried about stigma, or their manager finding out they've even called to ask something that might not even be related to anything too personal. So making sure that what's available is really clear to people, and that confidentiality piece, I think, especially around the sensitivity of mental health, can make a big difference in creating that safe space to open and understand resistance a bit more.
One of the resources that we used was Guarding Minds at Work, free online, which I'm a resource which I'm sure a number of you are familiar with, and that's a phenomenal resource. It gives you a number of questions that you can provide to your employees and ways that you can then assess them. And it's confidential. You don't need to get anybody's information, because that can be something that a lot of employees are worried about, things coming back to them. So that's one of many tools that are quite valuable. And if you haven't already checked it out, I encourage you to do so.
Experience in a workplace, and which sort of started out negatively, but then ended up becoming quite positive. But you're also invited to a lot of different places, right? To come and speak. So what are some of the things you're looking at and you're listening for in the variety of different capacities you operate in?
So for me, I think when I can see something working well is when I feel like the employees kind of take ownership of it, and they think it's really important, and they want to keep making it happen. But for me, I think sometimes one thing that I see, and I unfortunately see it a lot, is that you may see a company, in the news or in the media saying, we do mental health really well. And then you go into that company and you talk to their employees, and that's not what the employees think at all. And there's a couple situations, when you follow the Bell Let's Talk hashtags, sometimes there's former Bell employees sharing their experiences, how they didn't feel like Bell took care of them. And, I even had a situation where my friend was let go because of their mental health concerns, and then their boss wrote in the Globe and Mail how great he was at dealing with his employees' mental health concerns. So I think really just having that, for me, I think it's really having that awareness to have the awkward conversations. No one's doubting that the intentions are really good when you start these programs up, but where are they not working? Where are they failing? And being open to receive that information. No one's saying that what you are doing isn't good or isn't important, but where are the areas where people are falling through the cracks? And sometimes that tends to be, younger employees who maybe feel really replaceable or are engaged in precarious work and maybe can't feel like they can't, speak up, or that they don't get access to the to the EAP program or to the benefits. And so just really, I think being aware of you don't want to know that your program was failing in some way because someone wrote a viral article about it. You want to find it out before then. So really opening up that and allowing those conversations to happen where it's not you have one public face, but the reality is something different.
Interesting points are being made here. I think one, so there's that consistent communication that goes out, but there needs to be those consistent communication vehicles that allow a variety of feedback to come in, and then how you use that feedback can really speak to the success or maybe moderate success of your program. I really like reflecting on use of psychological services as a key indicator. I think that's a really great way of thinking about it, because I think sometimes when we think about how do we measure mental health, how do we know how we're doing, you might think maybe less use of those services is the right indicator, right? That, oh, we're so mentally well, folks aren't using these services. But really, it's, there's always going to be that need. Your mental wellness and your mental health program and your anti-harassment program aren't going to be a panacea for mental health challenges. But people having the confidence to reach out and to use services can be a really great indicator. Did you want to jump in? Okay, and I'm now going to invite Danielle to jump in.
I just had to make one comment. When you use the resources, if you find that you got the negative feedback perhaps, or something, you were surprised by the results, don't take that as a bad thing. It's actually good. When we were working with different companies in the past, or when I was working, one of the things we had from our executive team was, what if they tell us what they really think? That's what we want to know. We want to know that. And it's a really good thing. So if it seems like, oh my goodness, what the heck is happening here? I didn't know half of this stuff was going on. That's scary and daunting, but it's actually a really good thing. So don't take that as a big block. Use that as empowerment, and you have a huge opportunity to make huge change. So being the person that's championing this, phenomenal. Like, kudos to you guys for coming out and being here and for taking on that program and for going and searching for those answers, whether or not they're good or bad. So be empowered by yourself from doing that, and give yourselves a huge pat on the back for looking for that information, seeking it, and doing something with it, whether it's good or bad. So I just wanted to make that point.
No, it's a really important point, because I think sometimes, and this is sort of, human nature, the thinking fast, thinking slow dichotomy. If you don't ask, maybe we can assume we're doing it well. And really, even just asking, regardless of the feedback, is actually a really positive indicator that you're doing well. And Lydia, I also really liked your point too. Employees even knowing what their benefits are, that's a positive indicator, right? Lots of companies spend lots of money on benefit packages, but if you're not looking at the utilization rates, it's probably not money well spent, or at the very least, it's money well spent without any return on investment, which is not good at all. So this is going to be our final question. I did want to add that once we wrap up the panel discussion, feel free to come up and ask your questions to us. And in some ways, we've answered this, but I want to get everyone's perspective on this. Is there a finish line to mental wellness programs? Is there an opportunity to spike the football on this particular strategic initiative, or what should we be looking for, and what should we be telling our employees right from the outset, who might be thinking it's like every other initiative where it's either red, yellow, or green?
So I think that it is a process and a journey, as we were saying earlier today. I think the first phase of this journey has been really ignited by probably Bell Let's talk in terms of raising awareness. And whether it's an organization or an individual, there's never change without awareness and without pain. We just don't change without pain. My sense is that this will keep evolving as we build on each stage of the evolution.
I agree with everything that you're saying, and I'll just add, earlier somebody on the panel referenced the psychological health and safety standards, and right now that is a voluntary process, but I truly believe, based on the dialogue that everyone across Canada is having and removing that stigma, that it will become law, and then at that point everyone is going to be looking for those checklists to get what they need to get done. So I believe that that's going to be a very positive change for our country, and we really are the first country to implement. We are Canada. We implemented that, and which is pretty amazing that we're thinking so forward to be able to change that. So everything to what you said, that we need to just continue talking. Let's not stop the dialogue, continue talking, and we will get there. Very much like the big C. You know, everyone said no one could talk about cancer, and now everyone is so open about cancer. Let's change mental health to be the exact same thing. So this is one step to getting there.
I think when your question about if there's a finish line, and I just want to share a brief story. I was at a community consultation for the Mental Health Commission, and they were presenting this report. And the older folks in the room were really excited because this is something they had been pushing for probably about 30 years at that point. And by the time they got done, they looked. There was a 17-year-old in the room, and she took the microphone and she said, "Nothing you said appeals to me." So I think, there's not a finish line because the generations change and what they want will change, and how they want to talk about their lived experience with mental illness or mental health in the workplace will change. And I think you can get to a point where you have a process or something that works that you can adapt and change, but you're never going to get to here's one program and it's perfect and we never have to look at it. And always talking to the newer people, to your newer employees, to the changes that are happening within the organization, and make sure you make those changes to whatever wellness and mental health plans that you're doing.
My question, I'd actually pose it back out there, would be, do we really want a finish line? And my answer would be no, if that was being asked to me. And I think part of that is because I think it's human nature. We're always striving to better ourselves, but the piece that we've been missing for a long time, and the typical mom situation where mom always is the last one. We don't look at our own health and our own health. So it's really exciting that Canada is actually turning the camera back on ourselves and saying, what are we doing in our workplaces? Yeah, we've got, all these, we're doing fantastically well with sales and all these other key indicators from a business perspective, but what are we doing about ourselves? So my argument would be, I don't think we want a finish line. I think we're always striving and going to strive for something better. And that's very exciting to me. And I think that's exciting for any workplace that's looking to adopt the standard or putting together a program. I think that should be your reason for doing it, because you want to better your community and you want to help the people that are around you and yourself. And there's never an end result to that. We can always do better. We can always strive for more.
I think the finish line concept is really challenging to apply to mental health. There's so much research that's still happening. There's so much that's unknown about mental health and the brain and how that impacts every person differently. So combining that with the complexities of a workplace environment where so much can change day to day, so much can change with new team members, new projects. There's so many factors at play that I think it's such a complicated and such a complicated issue that finish line concept doesn't. I think we all agree. It's really challenging to think of even what that would look like, but it's very exciting to think that there might be, and getting there and working towards there is really important to keep doing.
So lots to be proud of and lots to work to do. So and that's not a bad place to be, particularly when there isn't a finish line. I want to thank my fellow panelists. This has been a very enriching discussion for me, and I also want to let everyone here know that there is information about the different organizations that are represented by the panel members here, so if you want to learn more about them, and I look forward to chatting with everyone, and thank you so much for coming. This has been really great.